David Smith here with one more Flipped Classroom math video. Today's topic, quadratic solutions by factoring. Now, you remember in the previous unit, we discussed all the different ways you can factor quadratic expressions. Now we're going to solve quadratic equations by using those same techniques to factor them and solve them. Okay? So one of the key elements we use with that is this thing called the null factor law. And basically it's pretty simple. If A times B is 0, then A has to be 0 or B has to be 0, or both. Okay? So if this product of two variables is 0, at least one of them must be 0. So we're going to exploit this pretty often when solving quadratic equations. Let's take a look at one. 3x times x minus 5 equals 0. You might have gotten this by factoring out a greatest common factor in a previous problem. Now we have it set equal to 0. So what we can do here is branch this out. 3x equals 0, or x minus 5 equals 0. So what I've done here is I've taken a look at these two terms in this equation. And I've noticed that like the 3x term could be the a in this one, and the x minus 5 term could be the b in this one. So I just broke them out. I did 3x equals 0, and I did x minus 5 equals 0. All I've got to do is solve these two little equations, and I'll wind up with two numbers that solve this quadratic equation. So let's finish. Divide through by 3. 0 divided by 3 is still 0. Add 5 to both sides. So here are my two solutions. Okay. Now, one thing to note is you can check your work just by plugging back in. If x is 0, then this part of this equation is going to be 0. Doesn't matter what x minus 5 is. Since this is 0, the whole thing is 0. Same thing for plugging in the 5 that we found over here. Put in the 5 for x. X minus 5 is 0. Doesn't matter what this term's going to be because this one's 0, so the whole thing is 0. Okay? Action. Okay, let's give you one to try. Okay, a little bit more complex than the last one, but I think you can give it a shot. Pause the video and see how you get. Okay, let me give you a hint. If you're stuck on that last one, here's the hint. Set this equal to 0 and solve, then set this equal to 0 and solve. Pause the video, see how you do. Okay, let's finish this problem. My two equations, x minus 4 equals 0. Add 4 to both sides. X equals 4. That's my first solution. Second one is over here. 3x minus 7 equals 0. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. 3x equals 7. Divide through by 3. X equals 7 over 3. Those are my two solutions. Okay, I prepared this ahead of time so we could just discuss it. If you'd like to pause the video and jot this into your note, feel free to do that at any point. Okay? I like straightforward recipes that tell me how to do what can be complicated problems. So if you memorize this process, if you know how to do this every time, then you can use that process to attack increasingly complicated problems. Okay, so what I'm going to do is explain this table, then I'm going to go through using it to solve this example problem. This side has the written steps about what to do, and then this side is working through these steps with an example so you can see it in action. Okay, so let's do this. Step 1, rearrange one side so that it equals 0. So in my example, what I have is 4x squared equals negative 10x. Nothing equals 0 yet. So I'm just going to add 10x to both sides. That cancels this one out. That gives us 0 on the right-hand side. And the left-hand side now is 4x squared plus 10x. So that's step 1. Okay? Step 2 is fully factor non-zero side. So this problem is a pretty simple, straightforward one. This is just a GCF factorization. I've got 2x in both of these terms. So I factor it out. Remember, factoring out is like reverse multiply or dividing. So I factored out 2x, that leaves 2x here, and that leaves just 5 over there. I'm still equal to 0. Okay? So that's fully factoring the non-zero side. Now what I'm going to do is just like in that example we did before, is I'm going to branch this out and take each term, set it equal to 0, and solve for x. So the 2x equals 0, I wind up with just simply x equals 0. And then 2x plus 5 equals 0. I subtract 5 from both sides, divide through by 2, and I have x equals minus 5 halves. So that's the process. Let's do some examples. Okay, I'm going to have you try this one. X squared plus 3x equals 28. This requires a different factoring technique than any of the ones we've done so far. So pause the video and think about it. See if you can do this one. Okay, let's take a look. The first step is set one side equal to 0. Okay? So I'm going to subtract 28 from both sides. I get x squared plus 3x minus 28 equals 0. Okay? The next step is to fully factor this non-zero side. So, if you recall this style of factoring problem, this is a product sum type. We want two numbers that multiply to negative 28 that add to positive 3. So think about that. What two numbers multiply to negative 28 and add to positive 3? It's positive 7 and negative 4. So we'll do x minus 4 times x plus 7 equals 0. Because negative 4 and positive 7 add up to the middle term, but when they're multiplied, you get the end term. If you are still struggling with this kind of factoring problem, there is a video back there in the stream that you can look at to get to review up on that. Okay? So this is fully factored. Now what we do is we branch and we solve. So one solution is going to be x minus 4 equals 0, which gives us x equals 4. And the second one is going to be x plus 7 equals 0, which gives us x equals minus 7. You can circle your two answers there, or if you like your set notation, you can always do your curly brackets and do 4 comma negative 7. Okay, here's another one to try. 5x squared equals 3x plus 2. Pause the video, see how you do. Okay, if you struggled and didn't know where to start, I'm going to give you a hint. This one requires that you split the middle term. Remember, first, get everything on one side, set the equation equal to 0, then try splitting the middle term to see if you can factor it. So pause the video. Okay, let's see how you did. I'm just going to take this one through. I'm going to move these two terms over to the side with the 5x squared. A pro tip, make your x squared term positive. Always do that. That makes the whole thing super easy, or easier. So 5x squared minus 3x minus 2 equals 0. I just move these two terms over by subtracting them, so they end up negative on this side. Now this is a split the middle term problem. So what I need to do is I need to find my AC. That's 5 times negative 2. So AC equals negative 10. And then I need to find two factors of negative 10 that add up to negative 3. So think for a minute. What might they be? Negative 5 and 2. Because negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. And negative 5 plus 2 equals negative 3. So that's how we're going to split the middle term. We're going to use negative 5 and 2. So let's do that step. 5x squared minus 5x plus 2x minus 2 equals 0. So all I did is I just took this negative 3x and I wrote it differently as two terms. If I combine these, because they are like terms, I can do that, I'd wind up back here. Now I'm going to factor this group and see what we get. So what's in these two terms? Looks like I've got a 5x in both of them, and this becomes x minus 1 plus, and I have a 2 in both of those, 2 times x minus 1 equals 0. Now if you remember from how we split the middle term, you know you did this step right when the two pieces in the parentheses are the same. And if you did that, then it allows you to finish the problem by combining these two, 5x plus 2 with the other one, x minus 1. Now this problem is pretty similar to when you were factoring the expressions, but you just have this equals 0 that you're bringing along. Now we're going to use it. This one is 5x plus 2 equals 0. 5x equals negative 2. X equals negative 2/5. So that's our first solution. Sorry, that's crammed down on the bottom of the board. I hope you can read that. Let's do this one. This one's a little bit more simple. X minus 1 equals 0. X equals 1. So let's review this problem. We had a quadratic equation that doesn't have a 0 side. So we needed to move the terms, rearrange the equation, so that we got 0 on one side, right there. Move them over. Now we need to fully factor the non-zero side. So this was a split the middle term problem. So we figured out how to do that. We found our AC. We found how to split the middle term, and we continued factoring until it was fully factored. Then we used the null factor law to solve it. We set this term equal to 0, solve for x, and then we set this term equal to 0 and solve for x. That's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a like or subscribe.